back
Right.
because of and I won't necessarily call it shyness. I'll just say that it's more, for me, it's more just wanting to assess a situation before plowing into it.
Yeah,
But
well,
there's
her and I would jump right up.
well, but like if
Right,
you went
we'll
to
jump in.
if you went to a party, if you went to a meeting, you would be there to, talking to various people and going and introducing yourself and getting to know a variety of people. I'll be the person in the corner with one drink and talking to two people. But I get to know those two people more in depth than you do with the 50 people who you talk to. Different style, different personality, different traits. You need both.
You do need both, because as a politician, not only do you have to be a good listener and observe what's going on around you, they expect you to be strong and sounding like you're a leader and being somewhat of an extrovert, and your timing has to be perfect at times. There's a time to say something, a time not to.
Well, I think part of the challenge has been with President Obama is that he's naturally introverted.
Yes, he is.
And so when you're dealing with members of Congress who expect, outgoing personalities and someone who wants to be out there, Lyndon Johnson, for example, bigger than life personality. Well, President Obama is a very cerebral, very quiet, introverted fellow. And my take is he's kind of an unusual politician because he's not, quote unquote, a glad handler. He is not someone who naturally goes out and just wants to be with people.
Yet there's a charisma about him.
There is a charisma, but it's passion, and it's a passion about what he's trying to do, and that's why he's got involved in politics.
And I guess when I talk about people like that, I think there's a mixture in there. They're not either or. He's a community organizer, which requires you to go out and reach out. He's a dynamic community organizer. He was dynamic in Harvard, too. So there's a part of him that is able to be extroverted and reach out and stuff like that. And then there's the other side of him. So it's like when you talk about even Rachel Maddox, she calls herself an introvert, okay? But in all her history, she was outgoing in many things. So,
Well, but it's the style of being outgoing. Being outgoing.
Yes.
And the ability to, it's almost like the difference between wholesale and retail. That retail would be one-on-one. Wholesale is one-to-many. And so the introverted person is better with a small group, and one-on-one, one-on-two, that type of thing. Whereas the extrovert is the life of the party, and you need both, because the world was full of introverts. We'd all be looking at each other and saying, "Oh, he's interesting, she's interesting," and but never finding out why.
Right.
And the extroverts would be talking and looking. Oh, look at them over in the corner! Aren't they having a miserable time?
But they're actually having a great time.
Yeah, or trying to bring them to the table so that we can find out what they're doing.
Well, so now there's so many things that we can talk about, and so many things that you bring up on Facebook that I've read and like that. But one thing that the three of us do have in common is that I, like the two of you, were once a Roman Catholic. So now,
very good.
So now,
here you go again.
Well, maybe we shouldn't speak of politics and religion, as they say.
But then again, why have a show?
Yes, but then being of Greek and Italian ancestry, my dinner table from childhood was nothing more than a huge symposium of religion and politics. There's no getting away from that.
Go.
So having had a background of my mother being Greek Orthodox and my father being Roman Catholic, then I was able to merge the Byzantine East with the Latin West, and still know some of the responses in Latin. So I have to bring it up because it's so interesting, and you and Father have discussed him. Pope Francis. Pope Francis. What do you think about Pope Francis?
Well, one thing that's good, we got 3 half Italians in this table. Fortunately, they separated us enough so we could go like this.
Exactly
Yes.
right. Yeah, exactly right.
I think, well, Russ and I were talking about this before we started. I think he is a very good man. He knew what he's getting himself into.
Yes.
What many people may not know, is that he was the second choice to be Pope previously when Benedict.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right.
Ratzinger. So he was the second. He was second. So basically, he was the heir apparent. So it wasn't like he just came in and didn't know where all the bodies were buried and knew where to name names and kick behinds. He knew all that coming in. He knew he was getting himself into, and I think he also had a good sense of knowing that the church was in big trouble and in a big public relations issue.
Yep.
And so he went about doing the things, at least that he could do quickly and unilaterally, to change the situation. And he also has the personal magnetism and skills to be able to project well.
Yes,
all
he does.
All of which are very important. We're Pope Benedict. I call him Ratzill for Midnight Cowboy for Ratzinger. Sorry,
I call
sorry.
him other things that I can't say on TV.
Sorry, folks. Sorry, Catholics out there. So he's found himself in a remarkable business situation, and the church is one of the largest businesses in the world. Mm-hmm. It's an organization, it's an enterprise, and it's an enterprise that's in trouble.
Yes.
So the first thing in any troubled situation is you have to go in, and he knew about assessing the situation and then doing the things necessary to stop the bleeding, stop the hemorrhaging of the image, and which he's done. Now the challenge is going to be moving it forward, because he's gotten to a certain point and he's alienated, or he's made certain vested parties.
Yeah, he really has challenged it.
Yeah.
A huge part of his organization. What is unusual is that he was runner-up the last time, and usually the runner-up, then that's it. Never gets
a chance again.
Gets a chance again. And what is unusual is that they had the organizational ability, his friends, associates, to get him to be Pope. I mean, that was, I believe, unusual. From my perspective.
But it's also good politics, the Vatican's part, because the interest of the Vatican is now in developing the third world countries.
Yeah,
so it's Africa, it's South America, it's China, it's Asia, and not that they've written off the United States and Europe, but it's less emphasis on the United States and Europe, and so if you look at traditionally who the popes have been, they've pretty much all been Italian.
They're all Italian.
Well,
or German.
He is of Italian ancestry, though.
But he's from
South
So
and he's moving the church that way, and they're clear on that. I mean, it's not something that nobody doesn't know or realize that move had to be, because that's where the growth of the church is. The church is traditionally failing in Europe, failing here in the United States, and so they know that this is the area where we need to
Well, that
go.
brings me to a question.
But it's business.
Well, yes, and politics, but that brings me to a question. Some of the that would be radical to some changes that he's looking and an attitude that he's portraying play well in the United States with the advent of accepting gays and with the advent of accepting a lot of other things that weren't readily acceptable. How does that play in the South American and African countries where they're in a different...
Well, it's kind of...
How does it join them in?
It depends on where you are. It's not playing well. And not only that, okay, he has structurally changed nothing. What he says is one thing. The political policy or the catechism is not changed. Nobody's changing the catechism. I mean, see, this is what it gets me.
Yes, I see that. Yeah.
Okay, he hasn't brought back law to the United States. He hasn't dealt with a lot of he's dealt with the bank and stuff like that. But there's a lot of things that are still in his way, and as far as we're concerned. But he wants to make the churches localized in the countries like Africa and stuff like that. So what you will have is a localized church who makes the judgment on these things in that area. Policy stays the same.
Right.
No policy has been changed.
Yes,
Nothing's changed on gays.
Yes.
But it's also the question of where is the money coming from?
Yeah, well, that's right. Where's
Right.
the money coming from?
Always
money
the
coming-
economics.
Yeah, always the economics. The money is coming from the United States and Europe
Right now.
right now. But it's drying up. It's that the percentage. There was a recent study. The percentage of people who consider themselves religious now has dropped significantly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Atheists are really that idea has been pretty well taken over lately. You hear a lot about it.
Europe and the United States. We're not alone. But see, when you're looking at money too, what you're having in those developed countries is a bottom up, a middle class that's becoming coming up. They join the church. Guess what they do? They donate. That's how they got their money in the first place.
Sure.
Okay, so your money's drying up here, and so isn't your belief factor. Is drying up here. So we're going over here because this is where the money's going to be coming from, and where the growth is, and where the belief is, where you can still deal with the belief that is somewhat. I got to be careful here because.
Well, the belief is more energized. Let's say
that's a nice way of saying it. Yeah, okay. The belief in those areas are more energized, right? Rather than where we are, where here in the United States, anybody that accepts that there's a difference between me and a gay person is out of their mind. Okay, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so that's what I'm saying.
But there are places in the world that the church is expanding to where they still kill you.
They still kill you if you're gay.
You're gay.
Right. Yeah. And you can't go to heaven if you're gay. Please give me a break.
Yeah, and there's
you know what I mean?
and
Really.
there's a fine line.
See what you did.
That's
I
right.
know.
There's a fine line to walk because in the United States and Europe, we want full acceptance of gays. We want women to play a greater role in the church.
In the church, right.
Right.
But in the Vatican, you're talking about the last big old boys club. And,
Yes.
And so the idea of the women. Well, okay, I'm going to get in trouble, but I'm going to get in trouble.
All right.
I know that. Is that you have men basically telling women what to do.
Sure.
Of course.
Of course. And women are supposed to like it.
It's outrageous.
You
Not my girls.
but and with the attitude that we've exalted you.
Yes.
We've exalted you, but you really can't have any say on.
You're on the pedestal, but stay there.
But stay there. Yeah. You have no direction. You can't tell us the direction of the church. You're really not a full participant. As long as, but you do the grunt work. You stay in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant, along those lines. Okay, blame me, don't blame him. Okay.
Yeah, don't blame me.
Yeah,
That's exactly
right. But so if he tries too hard in that direction, he's going to lose.
Right.
That's right. He's pushing to. You have to know your timing's got to be right.
Right, and he knows the politics of the situation.
That's right. And I remember, was it the Pope before Benedict, John Paul?
Yes.
Was he the one that said about women being priests is a long way to Tipperary? Was his comment. And now looking at it also, bringing in, now I have heard people call the Pope, he's a communist. They've put him there, he's a communist.
So,
I've heard that term.
so is Obama. So yes, right.
Oh boy.
Yes. Well, and if you take the classical definition of communist, which is improving the life of the working man and everyone being equal, then the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But if you take it from the standpoint of imposing a very controlling political environment, not so.
Yeah.
As far as that goes. But he's got a balancing act between an organization that's still stuck in the 16th century and dealing with the 21st.
Yes.
In the parts of the world, they're still stuck in the 16th century.
He has to deal with the center of the gospel, which is the center of the gospel is poverty, marginalized people, and the poor. You cannot, you can't say capitalism is the answer if you've got a starving population. So from that point, he's not a capitalist in the sense of until you have fed and clothed and sheltered and taken care of all the widows and all those things, he's a socialist.
Well, of course.
I mean, he has to follow he has to follow the center of the gospel, what Jesus said, feed my people, take care of my people, and do this. And how do you do it? He's got to deal with that. Whatever system it is, whether it's capital, socialism, whatever, that's the center. If you're not taking care of those individuals, then you're not following.
And so
you're
what?
not following
And so what do we
Jesus,
have?
the founder of Christianity.
Yes, and what do we have? We have a capitalism that's not really capitalism the
No.
way it was supposed to be.
Exactly
You
right.
should be able to use your talents as far as they'll take you, but
right.
at the expense of your fellow man.
Well, that's
I
the
don't
problem.
find how that works.
Well, that's exactly what he has to deal with from a leadership position, and as the Pope of the Christian Church and its philosophy to the leader. Scripture you can deal with. He can deal with Scripture as a living document. Very different than other people. Traditionally, Roman Catholics should understand that it's a living document. It changes as it goes through history. That's the Roman theological perspective. Sure. It is not the same in the Protestant denomination necessarily. So he's got to deal with the tradition of what Jesus said and the founding of the church, which was the church was to share. The church was about going in community that we all live in, and you might work and come home and share, and you might do something else. And we shared everything. That was what the reason for the church's development.
Yes.
It wasn't supposed to be I get up there and I tell you what to do, and you're second citizen to me because you're a woman.
What happens is what
It's
Michael has
baloney.
said. It always turns into any organization, turns into this kind of a situation.
Well, why is each archdiocese a separate business,
Separate entity.
A separate entity?
Right.
And partially, it's economics and legal.
Illegal. Right.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the other aspect. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So this way, the lawsuits, of the pedophilia scandal, are issued against the archdiocese, and the archdiocese are the ones who are supposed to be paying the victims of the pedophilia, not Rome.
Not the Vatican.
Not the Vatican. So in effect, and again, folks, it's coming from me, it's kind of like a franchise. It's like McDonald's. You get corporate, and corporate says you're going to do this, we're going to serve this, we're going to do that. But on the other hand, you're on your own in the local community, which is what Russ is saying. The spirit of the church should be that way. Mm-hmm. The practicality of it is that you've developed this big, large organization that has to be overseen and monitored and pulled in different directions.
And yet Michael and yet Father. If you have something, go ahead, Father.
No, go ahead.
I before we leave the religious topic, because I want to ask you we have a little time to have another question. Before we get off of that, the Greek Orthodox side of my faith, my mother. Now, I know that I'm supposed to call it Istanbul, but I'm not going to. Our Patriarch Bartholomew for the Greek Orthodox in Constantinople, the Pope always makes it a thing that he meets with him and that they recognize and have a good respect for one another. But you never hear these things coming out of the Orthodox Church.
No, you don't.
It's almost as if that's the secular world with the Romans, and this is the monastery with Bartholomew. He sits patiently in his little room. in a country that took his church, his Vatican, took everything from us, and he sits there patiently and prays. Very big difference, no?
Big difference. Yeah, there's a big difference in the fundamental situation of that. He doesn't act the monarch. Okay, he doesn't act the monarch. Bartholomew doesn't act the monarch. The fact of the matter is, okay, Pope Francis is the monarch and operates. It's the last monarch on the face of the earth. Okay, now Michael looks at it as franchise. I don't. I say this is the boss, and this boss can take anything he wants from you. He's king. The king is king. Now, you could have all the legal challenges to that, but he rules. And there is no, and you can see that when he says this is it, you're out. You are out. Okay, as he just did recently with all his situations, you know.
Yes.
But what I'm talking about is how it was set up
How
for
it's
the
set up, right, no.
right. No, he is the boss.
Yeah,
he's the CEO of the he's the CEO of the
and he's going to
organization.
fire you.
Right.
And if he wants to fire you, and I don't think, I think what's going to happen when he comes to America, I think he's going to shock a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think American bishops and cardinals are in for a serious shock when this guy hits the ground in the United States. I really do.
There's going to be a lot of wringing of hands and gnashing of teeth.
There's going to be heads rolling.
Heads rolled. Heads are and you can already see some of it. You know, some of the stuff is working towards that. You know.
Yeah.
Now I'll shut up.
No. I think this is great. What I want to turn to now, though, is we're coming down to about 5 minutes on the show, which is a long time for a show. We still have a few more minutes, and then a few after that. But we're coming close to the end. What's your passion right now, Michael, as a journalist? What are you? What's foremost in your mind at this point? One thing or several?
Well, I'm kind of learning as I'm going along. What I do now is a different mode of the traditional opinion editorial piece that I've from when I was a kid. I've had a great passion and loved to read the great op-ed writers, going back to Mike Royko and Jimmy Breslin and farther back, because they had a forum to analyze what's going on in the world, state their opinion, influence what's going on around them.
Right.
Okay, but it's all textual. Here, have an opportunity to do something similar, but add to it into the multimedia aspects of it. And to a certain degree, some of what can be done is using video, using audio, using different modes of putting in pictures or different colors and things like that to provide different emphasis. So it's like building a mosaic in a sense. Now, most recently, here's how it started. The most recent article, which was the most uninteresting man in the world. I loved it. Yeah, I was listening to the Dos Equis commercial, which I love.
Oh, I know.
As far as it goes.
Yeah.
Guy looks like him.
I know.
Yes.
You can see Father doing that.
You can see that, yes. You can see him do some of the things, too.
Yes.
But in hearing that, it just struck me as, okay, who's the most uninteresting person in the world? And of course, to me, that ties into what's going on politically and current events and so on.
Yes.
Well, I just, being a liberal, being a progressive, being a Democrat and so on, I look at what's going on in the Republican Party and just shake my head and laugh because it's saying this is ridiculous. Now, the fact that you have the junior senator from Florida who has done absolutely nothing since he's been in the Senate and really has stated no position that he hasn't changed.
What's his name?
Marco Rubio.
Rubio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And so he's gone back and forth on virtually everything, but he's running for president.
Right.
Why? He's running for president because he sees Barack Obama, who's a fairly young guy too, when he came into office, and saying, I can do that. If he can do it, I can do it. Why does he want to be president? What does he want to do?
He doesn't even know.
He doesn't know.
That's right.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know.
The guy doesn't even know.
I mean, his main thing was immigration, and then he's backed away from that.
Get out of that.
So it's other than the fact that I want to be president. That's nice.
Nice.
Jimmy Carter had a saying that you want to become president for two different reasons. Either you want to do something or you want to be somebody.
Well, that's any politician.
Right, but usually it's an either or. So Marco Rubio wants to be somebody.
Yes,
He doesn't want to do anything.
he has ambition.
And so that's nice.
Yeah.
But should he be president of the United States someday? Now, no. And so he leaves himself open to all kinds of attacks because he does dumb things.
Yes, he does.
He says dumb things. And so to me, that's humorous and so on, but it's also the fact that he's this bland person means that he's completely uninteresting, and he doesn't know that he's uninteresting
Right.
because he doesn't represent anything other than Marco Rubio.
Yes. Yeah, and I see that in him, and yet I have had people in the general public like him just because he happens to be a new toy in the room. He's young. After all, John Kennedy was young. Of course, he's no John Kennedy.
He's no John Kennedy.
Okay, and he's this and he's that, and he's a breath of fresh air, and he's this and that. Well, he's different, and he's young, and he's nice to look at, I suppose, but there is no substance there.
There's no substance there. And there's nothing, you look, as I wrote, there are 23 people potentially running for president of the Republican Party. If you have 23 candidates, you really have no candidate. So
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm looking away because
Sure.
they're telling me the time, and
is
it's
up.
and I can't see because I've got a shadow there. But no, I agree with you, and I enjoyed that. And I'm going to tell our listeners today or this evening, because our show airs in the evening, that they should go on Facebook and look you up and see the most uninteresting man and read that article, because I got such a kick out of that.
Or you can go to my website, which is mmaynard119.wordpress.com.
Yes.
And you can see, there's 70 some odd different articles on a variety of different topics. And
You can Google.
you can Google.
Google
You
it
can
too.
Google. You can Google Michael Maynard.
Michael Maynard or
Right, and it'll bring you to his site.
as far as that goes.
So at this point, I'm going to thank both of you for being here. I want to thank you, Michael, very
Pleasure.
much. It was an honor to have you here. Father,
Always,
yes,
always.
you're always kicking around. And I'm going to say from Town Talk, this is Kathy Johnson wishing you a good evening and a better tomorrow. Take care, all of you.